Hello everyone, I'm Simon and today I'm going to analyze the question when it is more interesting to buy a home than it is to rent it. And to hopefully answer the question if renting really is throwing money away. And this really is an age-old question with no clear-cut answer. Here's why. First, let's look at the cost of purchasing a property. Here in Belgium, you already need to pay up roughly 10% of the value of the property if it's your first home, just in costs alone. So if we use an example property that's worth 200,000 euros, this means that you will need to pay 20,000 euros in costs. On top of that, banks may only allow you to loan, let's say, 90% of the value of the property. So that means you need to cough up another 10%, so another 20,000 euros, just to be able to finance it. So in total, just for the purchase, we've already spent 40,000 euros out of pocket. For this example, we're going to say that the bank gave us a 1.5% interest rate. Next, you need to take into account the annual maintenance costs. A general rule of thumb here is that this is 1% of the purchase price of the home. So in this case, 2,000 euros per year. From my experience, this seems to be true as well. And while you might think that this isn't that, or this is quite a lot of money, and this doesn't seem realistic, you need to take into account that this is an average. So 1 year you might not have any costs, and then another year you might need to replace your boiler, for example, which is already a few thousand euros. Then in Belgium we also have a pretty BS tax. This is basically a tax on your imaginary income that you could have gained when you would have rented out your property. And no, I'm not making this up. On top of that, this is a tax that originated in the 70s and hasn't really been updated since. So one of the results that this brings is that some older properties that are renovated to modern standards have a real low annual tax like this, and other properties that are completely new up to the same standards have really disproportionately high amounts of this tax, even amounting to over thousands or thousands in some cases of euros. For a property of this size, we're going to take 700 euros of this imaginary property or income tax every single year. So in total, to recap, this is about 2,700 euros per year, just in costs alone. Now let's look at renting, and this is pretty straightforward. Let's say that you found a property that's similar to the one in our other example that we just bought, that you can rent for 700 euros every single month. Over the total of an entire year, this would be 8,400 euros that you would need to pay just in rent. Now let's compare the two, and we'll assume that we can sell our property for the same amount that we bought it with no extra costs. So in this case, we can recoup 20,000 of our 40,000 investment that we made initially just from the value of the property. Next, we look at the mortgage of the property. For our 1.5% interest rate, this means that we have a mortgage of about 720 euros every single month. Of this, over a period of 4 years, you can account for about 510 euros every single month just in principal payments. The rest is just lost to interest. In short, after these 4 years, we've paid back 34,554.72 euros, of which 24,465.85 euros are principal or capital payments. This leaves us with 10,088.87 in interest-related costs and another 10,800 in costs over these 4 years of home ownership or home ownership costs. On top of that, we still need to take into account the 20,000 euros of costs we had when we purchased the home. So these are a lot of numbers, but we're finally there. In total, we have a net cost of 23,576.98 over a period of 4 years of home ownership. While renting, we would have paid even slightly more just over a period of 3 years, namely 25,200 euros. And surprise, surprise, this is also the number that gets thrown around a lot as being a good break-even point, between 3 to 4 years of home ownership. And if you are not an investor, then this 3 to 4 years is a good guideline to follow, if you intend on staying within one place for more than 3 to 4 years, of course. But now it gets real tricky, since Chances are, if you are subscribed to this channel, if you aren't already, do that now, but that you are an investor. And in this case, we need to take into account a couple more things. First, we need to take a look at the opportunity cost. When we bought our home, we already had to invest about 40,000 euros just for the purchase of it. That means we can't use that money for other investments. Had we rented instead and used that 40,000 euros and invested it into the stock market, if we assume we got an annual average return of 6.5% adjusted for inflation, then we would have over 51,000 euros after 4 years. And we made over 11,000 euros in profit over these 4 years, so surely this is now the better deal. But here it gets even trickier. Let's assume that you get an average annual return adjusted for inflation of just 1% on the value of your property. This seems like a meager return for your investment. After all, you would think, okay, I'm only gaining about 1,600 euros over the period of 4 years. But this is the wrong way to look at it. In this case, your entire house after 4 years is now worth over 208,000 euros. So in total, that means we have an over 8,000 euros in profit from just a 1% average annual return. This is just the power of leverage. If we take these profits into account, then over a period of 4 years, our net costs for home ownership are about 15,000 euros and for renting still over 22,000 euros. So in short, even then, renting is still the worst option over a period of 4 years. But I am making a lot of assumptions here. I am assuming that your property will become more valuable every single year, something which history has shown us, like the 2008 housing crisis, that this isn't always the case. And on the other hand, I'm also assuming that you could otherwise get an average annual return of 6.5% adjusted for inflation when you invest the same amount into stocks. And also, history has shown us that this isn't always going to be the case, especially not in a short period of just 4 years. On top of that, if your roof needs replacing in the first few years, then your profits obviously won't be the same after 4 years. But on the other hand, I also didn't account for raising rent prices. Here in Belgium especially, you can legally raise a rent price every single year to account for inflation, and I also didn't take this into account. Another major factor that I didn't consider is if real estate prices in your area are ridiculously expensive and rent, on the other hand, for a similar property is really comparatively low. As a result, if your mortgage payment is significantly more expensive as a similar real estate property's rent, then not only is the rent cheaper, but that also means that you have more left over every single month to invest. And this will obviously have a dramatic impact on your break-even time. And finally, if you don't use that much leverage, or the more you fund out of pocket, the less interesting of a choice a home ownership becomes from an investment perspective. There are always reasons to buy a home, but in that case, there might be better investments, or there might be better options for investing than home ownership. As you can see, there are way too many variables to 100% accurately predict whether or not home ownership will be a good investment for you comparative to renting. But we can use the 3 to 4 year average as a good guideline for your decision. There are also very valid reasons for renting as well. First is if you don't know where you want to live the next couple of years or don't know for how long, then renting is your best friend. If, for example, you just met someone and want to see whether or not you will drive each other crazy or nuts over the next couple of years, then I would suggest renting and trying it out first. Next is if you don't want to have the hassle of being your own landlord or don't want the costs associated with being a landlord, then I suggest renting. And lastly, if you really want to move out of your home and don't have the money to buy your own yet. In this case, I would really suggest co-housing as well, since you can then share the burden of renting with another person. And don't get me wrong, these are all very valid reasons for renting, but renting as an investment for most people in most situations just isn't one of them. I really hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. I hate to ask it, but it really brightens my day, so please do that. And then also, what do you think? Is renting really a waste of money? Let me know in the comment section below on your thoughts, and then I hope to see you next time. Bye.